Hello, thank you for joining me in a brand new video. Today, I have a comprehensive review of the Xiaomi 15. Let's dive right in. This device is quite interesting because even though it doesn't have the Pro label, it can actually be compared to some Pro models from other brands. It's essentially the base model of Xiaomi's entire high-end series. However, the reality is that only its size is like a base model, since the rest of its features could indeed be considered comparable to those of Pro models. The price is also for a Pro model, and we are going to find it at 24,999 Mexican pesos, which is more than $1,280. However, remember that prices here are not the same as over there. This is for the only configuration distributed here, which includes 12 gigs of RAM with 512 gigabyte of storage. Consider that the manufacturer includes 4 months of Spotify Premium when you purchase this device, as well as 3 months of YouTube Premium. It also gives you access to VIP Dragon Pass lounges in airports, although it is not specified for how long, but they also provide you with a free screen replacement if it gets damaged within the first 6 months. Additionally, you get 3 months of 2 terabytes of Google One storage and another year of extended warranty. So in my opinion, it comes with a solid package of add-ons aimed at making the purchase more appealing. Also, consider that we are discussing a 5112GB unit, which other manufacturers such as Samsung or Apple typically offer at higher prices. But of course, among its competitors, we will not only find Apple and Samsung devices, as this is a segment in which more and more manufacturers are encouraged to launch their devices. But let's know point by point what this model can offer us. For now, what we can say is that its distribution is not so widespread. You can find it in Xiaomi stores both online and physical, also in Telcel and in the case of Mexico in Liverpool. The distribution differs in other countries, so verify if you're from elsewhere. Up front, you'll notice ultra-thin bezels, a highlight due to the latest screen technology, making the front appear well utilized. You'll also find Xiaomi Shield glass protection, offering excellent resistance to falls. Within the frames, we will encounter aluminum. On the right side, you'll notice the volume buttons as well as the power button. The device gives off a sense of excellent construction quality, and it also feels quite rigid and sturdy. On the top side, you won't find any microphones or similar components. Instead, there are just some small bands that aid in antenna connectivity. The left side is similar, with no additional features. Therefore, at the bottom, you'll find the tray that allows us to insert 2 cards. It's a nano SIM, but if you purchase it through phone companies, the second tray might be locked. We also have a microphone, a USB-C port, and the grill for the main speaker. This device is available in black, white, green, and the liquid silver option, which is really intriguing. I had the chance to hold it, and it not only provides a liquid silver aesthetic, but also features a texture with various reliefs, making it completely spectacular. If you are interested in experiencing a unique C, then this option would be ideal for you. Undoubtedly, this might be one of its most appealing aspects. However, in this review, I will focus on the unit in black color. It features a thickness of 8.8 millimeters and weighs 191 grams. Overall, it is a compact and lightweight device, though it does not boast an ultra-slim profile or anything similar. In fact, the camera module protrudes quite significantly, but this is justified by the high quality of its sensors, which we will discuss further. More on that later. For now, I'll end by saying it has IP68, so it's water resistant. You can submerge it in pure water, salt water, or pool water briefly and at a shallow depth, then rinse with pure water to prevent rapid deterioration. Overall, it qualifies as high-end. I appreciate the design when it comes to its aesthetics, how it feels in the hand, and its durability. However, it's worth noting that recently, several mid-range devices have started to include IP69. This is now something we're going to expect from all high-end devices. The screen measures 6.36 inches diagonally, which means it's slightly more compact than the average display found in the smartphone market. When you add ultra-thin bezels to the mix, it creates a device that is noticeably more compact than the rest. The screen provides us with a resolution of 2670 by 1200 pixels, which means it achieves a density of 460 pixels per inch. This implies that it will display incredibly sharp content, whether it's text, images, or absolutely anything you view through this screen, it will appear spectacular. Indeed, it is an AMOLED screen, which allows it to display vibrant and saturated colors. Additionally, in the configuration settings, you have the option to choose how you prefer these colors to appear. Typically, it doesn't provide us with extremely vibrant colors, But if you're interested, you can opt for the saturated setting to boost the color saturation. In fact, it offers 2 additional color palette options, or alternatively, you can delve into the advanced settings. There you can pick the precise color range you'd like the screen to display. Additionally, you have the ability to tweak the RGB parameters along with adjusting the hue, saturation, contrast, and other settings to your preference. So, Xiaomi is one of the manufacturers that allows extreme modification of the color representation of the display, and it also has an automatic adjustment of the color temperature of the display, so that in warm environments the display also looks warm, and it can also transform into a display with cooler colors if the white color of your environment is also cooler. Either way, it also has a manual color temperature adjustment, so it offers everything you need to make the display look warm, necessary for a truly excellent experience. Regarding brightness, it provides us with a peak of 3200 nits, making it an exceptionally bright screen. You will definitely be able to use it comfortably even under direct sunlight. Although it lacks an anti-reflective finish like we see in the Galaxy S25 Ultra, I still believe it delivers a satisfying viewing sensation. Keep in mind that it supports HDR content, which means it can emit more brightness in specific areas of the images or videos you are viewing. This is designed to provide a feeling of much greater realism when you're viewing all of this content. For example, on platforms like YouTube, Netflix, Instagram, and other applications, you can experience these type of enhanced images. Additionally, the camera itself is compatible with this treatment, so the photos you take with this device will also appear with this impressive realism on the screen. Therefore, it is compatible with HDR+ and Dolby Vision. However, regarding the minimum brightness, it does decrease, although it still maintains quality. The only downside is the lack of an extra dimming mode and accessibility options. However, the screen can achieve a very low brightness level. If you want it even dimmer, you won't find that option like in most devices. In the settings, you can choose to set the screen to the maximum refresh rate, as it's set by default to between. You have the option to set it between 1 and 120 Hz, which helps find a good balance between fluidity and efficient power usage. Alternatively, you can set it permanently to 60 Hz to reduce power consumption caused by software movements. Additionally, the device includes a video enhancement feature. However, keep in mind that enabling this feature will use more power. In a similar way, through artificial intelligence, it can provide HDR quality images, even if they aren't natively of such quality, and it offers another similar option. The audio quality is also excellent for televisions, enhancing the motion that appears in certain videos. It integrates a range of technologies, merging superior software with top-notch hardware to provide an outstanding on-screen experience. In this area, I believe there is minimal room for improvement. And now let's discuss the sound, as I must emphasize that it is truly spectacular. It features stereo sound, and I must mention that the main speaker delivers bass frequencies that are not only very good but also perceived with exceptional quality. And I like the sound because the device is compact yet sounds great. Let's hear a test, but remember, it's different live.
If someone's pouring up a drink, I'm calling shawty. I'm gonna find your crown so I can put it on it. Chandeliers, I won't be sorry. I got a feeling I'm gonna crash into this party.
Just to let you know, waiting to happen like.
Also take into account that the manufacturer provides a 10-band equalizer. So, if you enjoy customizing the sound entirely to fit your preferences, you have that option. Personally, I don't find it necessary. The secondary speaker may lack a strong presence of bass frequencies, but the main speaker's quality is so high that it balances it out nicely. As you may have noticed, we won't find perfectly symmetrical sound, but it still sounds excellent. And it also provides Dolby Atmos or Xiaomi sound for various surround sound settings. In fact, with Xiaomi Sound, you can customize audio for specific headphone models from this brand. For brand enthusiasts, the software also allows you to control each app's volume separately, so if you enjoy having 2 apps playing simultaneously on your phone, you can. We each have control individually, and I absolutely love that. However, we won't find a headphone audio jack as we might expect in a high-end device. So, if your main priority is music, fortunately, it does support LDAC aptX, Adaptive aptX, and LHDC in its version 3. This means you can enjoy a very high-resolution audio experience if you purchase compatible Bluetooth headphones. But if you prefer zero latency, you will need to use headphones with a USB-C connection or an adapter. Regarding the microphones, based on the official information we have, there are 4 units. Visually, two are easily noticeable, but it's likely that two others are concealed within the earpiece area for calls, or possibly along with the speaker grill, there could be another one placed. It's somewhat mysterious, but let's listen to them in action.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con los micrófonos de Xiaomi 15.
Now, we will test it in an environment with much more noise to try to analyze its behavior more thoroughly.
'Cause I can see the way you look and how you try to get my attention. Don't you know I know you? I know you. Roll me up and like you're sweet and princess. Don't you know
As you've noticed, even at very high volumes, it doesn't produce any distortion at all. So when it comes to concerts, it's going to provide you with a truly excellent experience. And to wrap up this section, the vibration motor is located on the X-axis. It even allows for intensity adjustment within the settings, and trust me, the feedback it provides in your hand feels extremely premium, just as you would anticipate from a high-end device. It has not disappointed us at all, rather. The experience is exceptionally good. The front camera on this device boasts a resolution of 32 megapixels and features an f2.0 aperture. Unfortunately, it has a fixed focus, which is positioned in a circular cutout at the top center of the screen. For a device at this price point, having a camera with fixed focus is quite disappointing. This is definitely one of the weakest aspects of this device. Additionally, as a quick unlock gesture, you can double press the volume down button when the device is locked for, and you can quickly access the camera, or alternatively you could double press the power button. Although it is interesting to note that this gesture is disabled by default. You must enable it in the settings, but thankfully it is available. This allows you to open the camera with great agility, even if you are in the middle of using another application or playing a game. If you quickly want to open the camera, this gesture will respond. We are going to see that in this case it offers us a very fast response to the photographs. That's great. You can perceive a very agile device. Very good. Quality, it does not have bursts, but it starts a short video if you hold down the shutter, but you don't really miss the burst because it reacts very fast. Here on the front camera, note that it will also offer us 2 levels of amplitude depending on the framing you prefer. And in the lower right corner we have what are called the beauty modes. As you can see, these modes allow us to modify a variety of different parameters, each one having its own unique intensity setting. It truly is quite a comprehensive list of parameters. Additionally, there is another button that enables a small comparative view. While you hold down this button, the effect will be temporarily disabled, and once you release it, the effect will be activated again. Now, watch closely. Here is how it would look without the effect, and here is how it would appear with the effect applied, even with all the effects to the maximum. It doesn't seem to me as artificial as others. We are also going to find here in this corner the filters that if we can preview in real time, and if we slide up and down, we access a special menu where it also allows us to activate another type of shutter so that you do not necessarily have to press the button. But for example, if it is easier for you to show the palm of your hand, you can do it like this, or you can also touch any area of the screen to take photography in complex environments, and naturally you can press the volume button as it works exactly the same way. In this menu, you also have the option to enable a grid, which helps improve your framing. Additionally, we're going to find quick access to the timer. And of course, naturally, you also have live photos available. In the top right corner, there's a switch to activate it. Once you take these photos, you'll notice that the response speed is somewhat slower because you need to capture a small. But keep in mind that here you have the option to view it. If you look at the top right corner, there is a button that allows you to watch this little video. Additionally, at the bottom, there's another button you can click on to change the cover of your photo. You can even select various effects such as bouncing or reversing motion to create some really cool effects. When you visualize these types of live photo effects, let's take a look at the results. Honestly, it resembles a picture that isn't so much. The quality is as one would expect in a high-end device. The colors appear somewhat pale and the contrast is also slightly low. It's important to remember that the camera has a fixed focus, meaning if you're either too close or too far from it, you might lose some level of detail. So, if you wish to capture intricate details of your face up close, it won't be achievable. In situations with intense backlighting, it's worth noting that the device doesn't offer an optimized preview. However, to be fair, it performs significantly better than numerous other devices. Note that after taking the picture, it balances highlights and shadows well, so there's not much to criticize. Here's another backlighting example where it performs well. However, the image has lower contrast than ideal at night. If you're in front of a light source, the light input and detail are good as long as you're at a distance. The front-facing camera performs quite well, effectively managing noise and grain, but be aware that in more challenging environments, it might lose some detail. Although you have the option to use the screen as a flash simulation, for some reason the image appears with very low contrast when using this mode. Even when capturing night portrait photos, the exact same issue occurs. If you use the screen as a flash simulation, you'll notice a significant loss of contrast, which makes the behavior a bit peculiar and unexpected. Device at night, yet fortunately I believe it is not bad at all. I appreciated that in portrait photos with this front camera, we will find it capable of keeping the objects in focus. So in portrait mode specifically, I quite like this front camera. However, it could use a bit more contrast, more precise colors and autofocus to truly be considered a high-end device. For the rear, we will discover a 14mm ultra-wide camera with an f-aperture of 2.2 and a fixed focus featuring 50 megapixels. Next, there is a 23mm main camera with an f-aperture of 1.62, equipped with autofocus and optical stabilization, also having a 50 megapixel sensor. In this case, it is specified to be the Light Fusion 900 sensor of 50 megapixels from Omnivision. The third camera is a 60mm with an f2.0 aperture, featuring autofocus, optical stabilization, and telemacro capabilities at 10 cm. Distance, also with a 50 megapixel sensor. As you notice, we have 3 high-resolution sensors. Although the ultra-wide camera lacks autofocus, which might seem like a drawback, it's typically used for macro shots. Here, having telemacro capabilities results in much better quality macro photography, as you'll soon see. He also considers that with high-resolution sensors, they provide cropping within the sensor, allowing you to achieve optical quality at 28, 35, 46, or 120 mm perspectives. This means it covers a broad spectrum with excellent photographic quality. However, personally, I would have preferred a telephoto lens with a longer distance because 60 mm feels a bit limited. I would have liked to see a 3.5x optical zoom, something closer to 80 mm, providing a more extended range zoom capability. Better quality. Although in this particular case, having a telephoto lens of 60 mm benefits the aperture, which can be slightly more open, allowing more light to enter. However, you will soon see for yourself how Xiaomi does not fully capitalize on 100% of these hardware capabilities. Hopefully they will release an update, but what is quite certain is that the hardware itself is excellent. Keep in mind that Xiaomi collaborates very closely with Leica to ensure a top-notch experience at the optical level. That is, the camera's lenses and covers are crafted to minimize reflections, allowing clean light to reach the sensor and enhancing photo quality. It offers a quick shutter response, giving a premium feel. Holding the shutter starts a short video recording, similar to the camera. However, if we slide the shutter over to the left side, we can access a burst mode with the capacity to take up to 100 photos. The interface is equipped with excellent tools such as the exposure compensation selector, which is accessible immediately even when in automatic mode. Additionally, at the top right corner, we will find the button that allows us to switch between various photography styles. Notably, there is the Lake Authentic style, which adds a subtle vignette effect around the edges to give the photograph a distinct and unique style that is a bit more classic. Or there is also Lake Vibrant, which provides you with a more traditional representation, similar to what we observe in other cell phones. Take note that it includes a beauty mode, but it features only a single parameter. Additionally, you will find the color filters that were available on the front camera. In the top left corner, there is another button dedicated to capturing motion photos, which helps prevent sweeping movements from appearing. In fact, something quite similar is the quick photo mode as well, which could also make the camera interface seem a bit redundant. Keep in mind that the photos will be taken at 12.5 megapixels in auto mode. However, you do have the option to switch to 50 megapixel mode if you're aiming for higher resolution photos. And for those who are interested in more advanced photography, you can access the Pro mode. It's important to note here that you'll find some excellent tools such as the manual control of the white balance, the focus, and the shutter speed, which can go up to 30 seconds. The ISO can reach up to 12,800 with the main camera, and there's exposure compensation too. But there's more. Press another button and you can adjust contrast, hue, and saturation. All of these can be set to your preference, and the best part is saving presets of styles you love to use repeatedly. Obviously, this is for experienced photographers, but I love having these options to set everything up with just one click. With just a touch, you are able to adjust a wide range of parameters. And the most exciting part is that it supports capturing photos in RAW format. You even have the option to combine RAW with 50 megapixels, which means you can undoubtedly enjoy the ultimate photography experience. Additionally, There are other useful tools available, such as checking for overexposure with a little zebra pattern, or viewing the histogram, among other minor tools that, I must emphasize, greatly enhance the overall photography experience. When using Smart Capture, it's crucial to understand that it can detect the edges of documents, especially in the mode named after this feature. However, if you're using the automatic mode, this detection won't occur, so keep that in mind. Additionally, it's worth noting that although the feature doesn't initially allow us to add pages, it would be significantly better if, after capturing the image, we were permitted to edit it. This would enable us to apply various effects, enhancing the image's optimization, or cropping it if the edges weren't accurately detected. You can rotate it, and you can also remove notes that have been left on top. Notice that it is capable of optimizing in that manner. Therefore, the scanner is equipped with good tools. Ideally, it would allow us to add pages and export to PDF, but unfortunately, we don't see that feature here yet. As for QR codes, if we are going to find detection from the main camera, it is just not as clear. Please note that a small button appears on the right side, which we can click on to finally access the actions. I'm not sure about the QR codes, but fortunately it is available from the main interface, but let's take a look at the results. In this case, we are looking at the ultra-wide camera, which seems to me to give a positive level of detail. We even see that it controls well its distortions and the chromatic aberration that it could generate. It looks with a good quality without a doubt, and it is something to highlight because generally the ultra-wide camera of many devices is simpler. In this case, it appears to be of good quality. Moving to the main camera outdoors, it maintains excellent performance with a high level of detail. I especially love how well the textures are perceived and how it handles color. Everything about this photo is impressive even though we're outdoors, which is an easier setting. Notably, it offers a 46mm crop inside the sensor while still maintaining an impressive level of detail. It's truly an exceptionally good camera. After that, we move on to the 16mm telephoto camera, which unfortunately doesn't offer us extensive a range. Personally, I would have preferred a more advanced telephoto camera in this regard. Additionally, you'll notice that it operates somewhat differently. Pay attention to how there are fewer warm colors visible compared to what the main camera was providing, resulting in a less consistent feel with this telephoto camera. In this particular case, it will provide us with a crop inside the sensor, allowing access to a 5x digital zoom that practically delivers optical quality. Once again, the level of detail appears to be very impressive, so at short-range zoom, it's almost perfect. However, when you move to a 10x zoom, you might begin to experience some difficulties. Take note of how the image starts to appear a bit cloudy or smeared. In that regard, it's not going to offer us as high quality an image. Consider, for instance, the photograph taken with a 30x zoom. In this scenario, you can clearly observe the way Xiaomi operates. When there are letters or figures that are well defined, it will attempt to enhance them to appear sharper. However, objects that are more irregular, like the tree leaves in this case, won't receive such advanced treatment. This can make the experience feel somewhat unusual. Additionally, it allows for a maximum of 60x zoom, maintaining the same behavior. In this particular case, one could say that it already appears quite forced in areas lacking well-defined letters or figures. For instance, let's take another look at a few photographs to examine how the zoom would perform when faces are present, reaching up to 30x. I think that this level of zoom is typically used as a maximum in everyday situations, and in that context, the result is sufficiently good. It's not the best, but it does come out reasonably well. And here is the maximum zoom. The truth is, I believe it handles the maximum zoom correctly. The only detail here is that it is compared to the Oppo Find X8 Pro, which has a superior zoom. However, I do think this device has valid arguments to defend itself in this aspect. In backlit scenes, notice that the preview is optimized, which is a great feature, and the result is quite positive. With the ultra-wide camera, you might notice a bit of chromatic aberration, but it's white, so it doesn't become too much of an issue. It's not as unpleasant as with other devices. In this regard, I believe the photography is correct. The main camera offers accurate color rendition in backlit scenarios, performing well without overexposed areas. However, the telephoto camera tends to overexpose slightly and shows a different color than the other cameras, resulting in an inconsistent experience. The colors look a bit cooler, but speaking specifically of the backlight treatment, it does a good job at night. The ultra-wide camera again maintains a very high performance, exposes the brightest lit area as well, controls noise in the darkest area as well, and maintains a good level of detail. It is undoubtedly one of the best ultra-wide cameras for night photography. The main camera holds on to this same essence, but you would clearly notice a bit more detail, especially in the brighter areas. It still retains all the benefits I mentioned with the ultra-wide camera. With the 46mm crop, we are going to observe that the level of detail doesn't stay as high as we saw during the daytime. At night, it seems to prioritize capturing more light over maintaining detail. However, when you switch to 60mm once more, you can observe that some details are regained. although it appears that this telephoto camera struggles a bit in these low light scenarios. Now, you're viewing the scene with the 120mm crop, and I believe the outcome remains favorable, even if not extremely spectacular. Moreover, in scenes lacking light within the frame, once again, the ultra-wide camera performs excellently, particularly in preventing the emergence of artifacts on the darker areas are handled well, with good noise control and texture retention. The main camera sometimes shows slight overexposure, yet it generally performs well. Even when cropping and applying a bit of zoom, the results are impressive. However, notice that when you reach 60mm, it switches to digital zoom, meaning the telephoto camera isn't utilized, despite its relatively bright aperture, especially considering it's a telephoto camera. But interestingly, when we reach 120mm, it does indeed utilize the telephoto camera, and the outcome is quite impressive. It is puzzling that at 60mm, it doesn't employ its telephoto camera. This is something odd that they should address with an update. However, interestingly enough, if you switch to night mode, it seems as though it does use the telephoto camera, and trust me, the image quality is excellent. The natural colors appear really good and the dark areas look well defined. For macro photography, this is about as close as you can get with the main camera. It already performs well by itself, providing a good result. However, if you apply zoom within the sensor, you will notice that you achieve a result which is not only very good, but also quite outstanding. Yet, you can still get even closer because the telephoto camera is equipped with macro capabilities as well. So, take a look at the level of textures you can capture from really tiny objects. By zooming in further on the sensor, you can see the excellent quality that macro photography can achieve. The camera does, it is incredible. In this sense, it does what one would expect from such an expensive device. But if instead of being very close, you want to be very far away, here you have the reference of the ultra-wide camera and then the panoramic mode that fortunately, if it is high resolution in that sense. The experience is good, but if you get to notice a little fusion between the photographs, so it does not seem to be very skilled in this regard, plus it does not allow you to use the camera. The ultra-wide camera is great for capturing panoramic shots, but it may not always be the most impressive choice for this kind of wide photography. When shooting scenes with motion, it's important to keep in mind that even outdoors, the ultra-wide camera can present some challenges. However, the main camera typically handles these situations quite well. Additionally, the telephoto camera performs admirably in well-lit environments. When shadows are present, the ultra-wide camera remains quite comparable to the main camera. It's worth noting that the ultra-wide camera also excels in well-lit scenes, even when shadows are involved, maintaining a performance level similar to that of the main camera. Might experience a bit more impact is the telephoto camera with its broader movements due to its high-resolution sensors. The device features high-resolution modes for each camera. Naturally, the ultra-wide camera offers slightly less detail because of its wide lens, but the main camera provides enough detail for large-scale images, though I doubt that's its main strength. However, it is quite interesting that the telephoto camera appears to provide a higher level of detail for these large-scale photographs. And finally, regarding portrait photography, it is worth noting that the device performs well even in backlit situations. Although the photos taken with the 23mm lens might not seem as appealing, it is most advisable to use one of the other perspectives that Xiaomi offers to the user. For instance, the 35mm lens starts to show improved quality or appears somewhat better, more appealing. With the 60mm lens, naturally you will achieve an even higher quality portrait. Take note of the beautiful blur effect on the left, and the depth detection is quite impressive. Additionally, the device provides the capability to capture photos using a 75mm in a setting. It's important to mention that it retains a sufficiently good level of detail. Although it is somewhat noticeable that digital zoom is being utilized, the bokeh effect produced is indeed comparable to that of a more advanced phone configuration. So, overall, as I tell you, the portraits are really quite good, and this device also gives you the option to use some different color styles, allowing you to have slightly varied portraits in terms of how the colors are rendered. And watch closely, here are some additional pictures just for you to see for yourself how this device performs in portrait photography, especially at long range. In this case, it even combines highlights and shadows effectively, handling a complicated area of the lens, which it manages to solve well. Pretty well. So, when it comes to portrait photography, I believe it achieves a good level of quality. It accurately detects objects, which is a positive aspect. In terms of video recording, we have 4K at 30 frames per second as a standout feature for the main camera. Plus, you can even get 4K at 60 frames per second with any of the cameras, whether it's the rear cameras or the front camera. That's indeed a very good feature. The selector used to switch and toggle between these different resolutions might not seem very convenient on the main screen. However, it's important to note that if you can access an extended menu, which is much easier to manipulate, then I believe it's perfectly fine. Additionally, please note that there is a Master Cinema mode available. This mode provides a different coloring and is even compatible with HDR. It can be quite handy if you are looking for a higher video quality. However, keep in mind that it needs to be activated separately. One thing I really appreciate is that we can find the exposure adjustment directly on the main interface, which proves very useful, especially in darker scenes where cell phones tend to overexpose the results. Additionally, we also encounter the beauty mode once more, offering various parameters. However, in this situation, it is not compatible with recording in 4K. The same issue arises with the color filters, meaning if you choose to use them, you will experience a slight loss in quality. Another interesting aspect of Xiaomi's video recording interface is the inclusion of a teleprompter. This feature can be extremely useful for content creators, especially when using the front camera. You can easily add this option and then read a script. The device will progress according to your configuration, making it quite convenient and practical. Typically, on other phones, you would need to install an external application, but Xiaomi has this function already integrated. I really like this option and I believe it's quite good. In fact, when you record using the front camera, you should note that you can enable a front sound mode. This ensures that the microphones activated are the ones directed towards this side. Also, keep in mind that within the Pro mode, we will find parameters specifically for video recording. So, right from the start, we have the ability to select which microphone we want to use and also control its gain. We will also have the ability during our recording to adjust the white balance, focus, shutter speed, and ISO settings. Of course, it's crucial to understand what you're adjusting to ensure the final result remains intact. Additionally, you can create markers for the significant moments in your video. This way, you can easily revisit those specific instances later when you review the footage. And if you enter the main interface, you'll notice that you can control the focus and exposure quite easily. However, while you're recording, take note that you have the ability to move seamlessly between all the different cameras. You can also pause and resume recording without any hassle. Additionally, there's a button that allows you to take a picture. On the downside, you don't have a button to control the flashlight. Furthermore, you lack the ability to rotate to the front camera before you start recording the video. Therefore, the experience is somewhat more limited in that regard. However, it includes the director mode, which allows for a multi-camera experience when used with Xiaomi tablets or other cell phones of the same brand. You can set up this device as either a camera or a monitor. So, as I mentioned, you can integrate multiple cameras and use one device to switch between various views. This is a highly advanced ecosystem feature that will undoubtedly be truly spectacular, as it even lets you record in 4K resolution. But that's not all, and I had actually forgotten to mention that within the Pro mode for video recording, we will also find the option to record in log format. This allows us to colorize the footage later, which helps us to obtain a much more extended dynamic range and have complete control over the colors. So it's truly a tool that has professional capabilities. Now, let's take a look at the results. Here, you are looking at the video in 4K resolution, whose main utility is to be able to zoom in later and maintain a good level of detail. It's clear that this mode isn't one you'll use every day, but it's nice that the device has these layers available. Now, as we are already observing the result in 4K, it's important to note that the ultra-wide camera performs reasonably well, but I feel it lacks a bit in sharpness. When switching to the main camera, you can definitely notice a significant increase in sharpness compared to what we were viewing before, so it really enhances the overall quality of the video. When using the 2x zoom setting, we are clearly dealing with digital zoom only. However, it is very similar to the telephoto camera setting at 2.6x. In this regard, it manages to regain a decent level of sharpness. One positive aspect is that all cameras are capable of recording in this resolution without needing to stop and start recording again or anything like that. Given the price range, this was anticipated, so it records quite well, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the main strength of this device. Let's perform a zoom test and observe how the ultra-wide camera appears noticeably warmer and lacks detail. This becomes very apparent when we switch to the next camera, as it provides improved color quality. As we continue to zoom in, you'll see that it allows us to reach up to 15x while maintaining good stabilization. I believe the transition between the cameras is well managed, but you might notice a subtle difference, especially between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera. Take a look at the result when recording backlit using the ultra-wide camera. Once again, we notice that the image quality isn't as spectacular as we might have hoped for, but when we talk specifically about the balance between light and shadow, it performs adequately. When we switch over to the main camera, it continues to maintain more or less the same essence, marking the shadows slightly so they still appear as shadows. However, they aren't completely dark, so in my opinion, the performance is quite satisfactory. It's quite good. Now, moving on to the telephoto camera, its performance is quite similar, although in this particular case, it does manage to illuminate the shadows a bit more. However, in both scenarios, I find that the performance in this backlight situation is quite positive. Additionally, it has the capability to record in Dolby Vision. To play it back, you would of course need a dedicated or specific monitor that is compatible with this standard. The quality is quite good, and in fact it even seems to be better, especially when it comes to the main and telephoto lenses. When discussing the backlit recording, please note that you are watching a conversion to SDR, so you are not viewing the original video. However, trust me, it performs excellently in these types of environments. At night, the ultra-wide camera performs quite well. It attempts to reduce the noise a bit, which might result in less detail, but given that we are dealing with an ultra-wide camera, I believe the performance is still acceptable. Nevertheless, in darker areas, you might find it more challenging, so it's advisable to switch to the main camera, which performs significantly better in these dimly lit scenarios. When there's a light source within the frame, the main camera may not deliver results as striking as those in a photograph, but I believe it's still quite satisfactory. The telephoto camera will exhibit a similar behavior. However, observe how when you move to areas that are somewhat darker, you notice a bit more noise appearing momentarily. However, the device tries to reduce the noise. I find the night video recording to be of high quality, but using the telephoto lens requires aiming at a well-lit area. If you aim at a dark area, it switches to digital zoom. A trick is to focus on a lit area to activate the telephoto camera, then shift to the dark area as the digital zoom will actually. The camera is not of very good quality, it looks overexposed to have more detail, so it is recommended to use the telephoto camera, but in night recording I think it is simply within the expected. As for stabilization, note that the ultra-wide camera performs well when walking and even when running. This is because it is a fairly wide camera, so it manages to compensate but perfectly well the movements. When it comes to action scenes, if the result is positive, even the main camera performs excellently. Whether you're running or engaging in action, it does well. Additionally, the telephoto camera also records effectively. If you're walking, it manages movement smoothly, which can sometimes be challenging. However, the cell phone seems to handle these situations quite well, maintaining good performance in this aspect. The device also features a shot steady mode, which provides even greater stabilization. However, when you activate this mode, you cannot switch between cameras and it records solely in full HD. Personally, I find this mode somewhat unnecessary since the standard stabilization is already excellent. Nevertheless, if you prefer, it is there for you to use. Additionally, there is a shot steady pro mode available, which utilizes the ultra-wide camera. Again, it restricts camera switching, and the output is also in full HD. But if you manage to stabilize in a good way, then for scenes with a lot of action, you could use this mode and the stabilization as it could be beneficial. However, the image quality of the ultra-wide camera isn't the best. The focus appears to work correctly with the main camera, it doesn't react very quickly, but at least it seems accurate and doesn't get confused at any time. The device also has a super macro mode that allows you to record using the telephoto camera, enabling you to capture some truly fascinating scenes. Here's a reference with the size of the finger, illustrating that the ant being recorded was indeed extremely small. This demonstrates the device's excellent macro video recording capabilities, especially since it can record in 4K. Additionally, the device provides us with a special cinema type or portrait type recording mode. By default, it records in a 2:39:1 ratio, meaning it has a panoramic format like in cinema, though switching to 16:9 will still provide decent edge detection. If it seems a bit artificial, remember it's in full HD, not 8K, so it's less appealing. Notice that if I move closer, the blur effect intensifies, maintaining a professional look, and if I move away, the blur reduces. This behavior seems quite good to me, but the image quality is not particularly impressive, primarily because it can only record in full HD. However, it's worth noting that it does have the capability to keep certain objects in focus. Although in this instance, it tends to detect and focus on objects that are approximately near your hand, therefore it is not as intelligent or advanced as it is in photography. Yet, I believe that you could still achieve some positive results by using this mode. Additionally, it offers another blur mode known as wide mode. This will produce a slightly different style of blur, although not significantly so. There is a significant difference between one mode and the other, yet this is what we have available, showing exactly the same behavior we have already observed. The device also includes a fast camera mode. In this scenario, you can operate in K with stabilization that might not seem very advanced, but at least the speed setting is accurate. It can range from 4x, which is useful for recording while walking or capturing people's movements, and it can even reach up to 1/800x, which would be an absolute spectacle to witness. Recording the plants, and it also lets you utilize both the ultra-wide camera as well as the main and telephoto camera, and even employ digital zoom to apply this type of recording. Therefore, the fast camera is certainly one of the most comprehensive options currently available. This device also supports slow motion in various modes it can be in HD. Although we typically omit that one since it is also capable of full HD at 120 frames per second. The file is recorded at that frame rate, just in case you were wondering. If that data intrigued you, you could even record at 240 frames per second. And once more, the file is recorded at that identical frame rate per second. The outcome is quite impressive, but just when it seemed like everything was going smoothly, we encountered the 960 frames per second mode. This of course sounds incredibly appealing, and the result appears quite stunning, almost like freezing time. However, you should know that Xiaomi doesn't permit resuming at a normal speed, so the video suddenly halts, which gives a rather, I don't really like it. And now take a look at the result using the front camera, which fortunately allows us to capture in 4K at up to 60 frames per second. This capability results in quite interesting and fluid movements. However, I must insist that the color might appear slightly paler, similar to what we observed in the photograph. Additionally, having a fixed focus somewhat restricts the scene's versatility. Nonetheless, if you are at an optimal distance, it does provide us with a fairly good level of detail. In fact, that could actually turn into something quite prominent and a positive point. However, what I like the most is that it provides an excellent treatment of backlit scenes. You'll notice that it compensates for the lighting extremely well. Even the shadow area is perfectly represented. Interestingly, it includes a special HDR mode, but be aware that it appears disastrous. It reduces the resolution to full HD and adds a significant amount of noise and graininess in the shadow areas. It's not recommended to use that mode under these conditions. When you're dealing with significantly lower lighting conditions, such as at night, even if you're standing in front of a light source, you'll notice that there's a lot more noise present in the image. The graininess becomes noticeable, and although the device attempts to optimize the scene to some extent, it actually struggles quite a lot. Here you can clearly see that it isn't a camera of the high quality we'd hoped for. Additionally, this front camera allows us to record video in portrait mode, but it does reduce the resolution to full HD, which is rather disappointing, honestly. It appears with excellent detail and the blur effect is quite appealing, so I believe I genuinely enjoy this mode. It looks very pleasing indeed. Additionally, you have the option for slow motion recording here with the front camera, albeit in a basic format, yet it is available. Furthermore, you also have access to a fast camera mode, and in this instance it even includes stabilization, which operates with nearly the same parameters that we observed on the rear camera, thus it performs remarkably well. It also includes a dual recording mode, which allows you to, for example, split the screen in two to display both the front camera and the rear camera simultaneously. However, the video resolution is in full HD, so in that regard you don't get as much detail as we would have preferred. In this instance, once you have begun recording, you cannot switch views, but it's important to note that autofocus remains enabled, as well as the zoom capability, even though it will not change dynamically between the three rear lenses. However, if zoom is enabled, you can also switch dynamically to picture-in-picture mode. This can be done with either the front camera or the rear camera. It's important to note that this small box can be moved around on the screen. Although you can't resize it, it does have completely straight corners while maintaining the same capabilities as before. Of course, you can switch between the views, but you always have to go through the split screen view, which is somewhat unusual, but that's how it is available. In the operating system, we will encounter Android 15 and HyperOS 2.0. In this situation, Xiaomi promises 4 years of software updates and 6 years of security patches. So it's not yet at the industry's top level, but at least we do have a pretty good guaranteed period, I think. HyperOS, as you already know, is an operating system that has undergone numerous modifications over its lifespan. It was previously known as MIUI, and even now, you still encounter numerous traces of MIUI within it, which I would like to see improved. This means the device might still exhibit some redundancies or inconsistencies at the software level, although it is gradually becoming more mature. I remind you that in this instance, we observe the panel separately from both the quick settings and notifications. When we explore the customization level, we will discover a variety of additional options available to us. For instance, we have the ability to modify the lock screen using different magazine styles and a range of customization choices. This includes the depth detection feature for certain images, allowing the clock to be positioned behind them. Additionally, there are other custom covers that we can change as well. The device also features an impressive collection of wallpapers, which includes the super wallpaper section. However, you will need to download these. It's important to note that after a short wait for them to install, you will discover some wallpapers that offer an incredible transition between the always-on display cover, the lock screen, and the home screen, providing a remarkably fluid experience. We will also discover the always-on display feature, which in this instance is available in full screen size and synchronized with the lock screen. Although it's named always on display, by default it has an intelligent setting that doesn't keep it on constantly unless you specifically need it. However, if you choose to activate the always on option, the device will consume a significant amount of energy. Fortunately, you can adjust this configuration as needed, according to your personal tastes. Naturally, you can also modify other elements like the font or the notification effects, which slightly illuminate the device's sides. Additionally, There is the carousel feature for wallpapers, which changes the background each time you attempt to unlock your phone. Moreover, you know that through its Steam store, we will discover an incredible level of customization available. This software has as one of its fundamentals the customization, so there are many themes available for you to change the aesthetics of your device completely to your liking. The home screen by default comes configured with application drawer, but remember that you can have the classic style with all applications on the home screen or a light style with giant icons. In fact, something curious is that it also allows you to group the icons by color to try to change the look of your device. To locate them in a somewhat easier manner, notice that here in the application drawer, these buttons show up, which is something we don't typically see in other phones, and I find it to be an intriguing setting for those who are a bit more visually oriented. By the way, also in the home screen options, we will find the choice to blur the wallpaper and create a blurred effect. Remember, it also offers a pleasant change widgets catalog. Some widgets that were designed by Xiaomi have also been updated in this new OS version, featuring a very nice design. You have the option to choose not to display text, icons, or applications if you want a cleaner look. Additionally, note that you can even change the view of the list of recent applications. By default, it is vertical, which is different from the vast majority of cell phones. However, if you prefer, you can adjust it. The more traditional horizontal style can be used in this way as well. Additionally, you will have various gestures at your disposal. For instance, pressing the power button will let you access Gemini, which is the Google Assistant. You can swipe down with 3 fingers to capture screenshots. There's also a scroll screenshot button available, or you can hold 3 fingers on the screen if you wish to take a screenshot of a particular area. We will also find the gesture of double tapping the button to open the camera, and we can replace it with the gesture to turn on the flashlight. In fact, it integrates 2 or even 3 taps after opening a specific phone function. Curiously, here appear tools like Alipay and WeChat, which are not globally used, although they are popular in China. This is another demonstration of how Xiaomi still needs to put in work to further optimize its operating system in a way that is not always user-friendly or easy to use. Global. Additionally, we discovered the floating ball feature, which lets us include extra tools in this menu. It's worth noting that the one-handed use mode only minimizes content in portrait orientation, which is something I personally dislike. It resembles the native Android setup, which is quite similar to the iPhone. Moreover, it allows us to personalize the screen recordings by adjusting various parameters, such as the audio source, frame rate, or even the orientation. And the quality is impressive, as it includes great features here as well. Moreover, with this floating bar, we will enjoy a really excellent multitasking experience. For instance, we have the ability to open applications in a floating window. Please take note that in this scenario, we can resize these windows, and we can open up to 2 applications simultaneously in this particular format. However, keep in mind that YouTube is not available as an application you can open in this format, although Instagram is. Yes, and remember, you can minimize them by sliding them aside. If we use the split screen option, we can have up to 4 apps open simultaneously. If you make a gesture like closing the app but slide it to an edge, we can switch the app to other modes if it's compatible. We have the option to toggle a floating view into a split screen view using these buttons. Notice that this allows us to have more apps open simultaneously, with the apps in split screen remaining linked together. Additionally, this sidebar is designed to provide you with extra tools. For instance, in video apps, it might display tools for recording the screen, taking screenshots, projecting, or even activating artificial intelligence subtitles that will listen to the audio from your device. You can also use the video feature, and note that you can set the language so that even if the videos lack subtitles, the device can display them automatically. This is undoubtedly great. Additionally, this sidebar lets us change the screen's color style or enable features like Dolby Atmos and other sound effects. In video calling apps, you'll find options to better illuminate your face, especially when you find yourself in a dark environment, by turning up the screen brightness and adding a white outline. It also provides the ability to activate a noise reduction algorithm, translate your call in real time, and activate subtitles similar to those I demonstrated a moment ago. You can even connect the camera from another cell phone using it as if it were the camera of this device. Additionally, it allows you to add hand gesture recognition, enabling some animations to appear when you make these gestures. So this toolkit is extremely practical, and I truly appreciate it. Just keep in mind that when it comes to video applications, it offers you the ability to choose which specific applications you would like these tools to appear in. However, when dealing with call tools, it does not provide the option to select, which means it's likely that some applications may not support these particular options. Additionally, another inconsistency that is quite easy to notice within the operating system of this device is the heart rate reader now. That Xiaomi has now opted for an ultrasonic fingerprint reader. However, this means you cannot use it to measure your heart rate. So they have decided, as they did in previous generations, to use the camera along with the flash for this purpose. Yet, in earlier models, the flash was positioned near the camera, allowing it to work effectively. In this instance, the flash is unable to illuminate your finger while the camera can capture it simultaneously. Thus, having this option in the software is pointless. It's undoubtedly a significant oversight, but on the bright side, there is something positive. The benefit of this feature is that it enables the detection of when you are actually looking at the screen, which helps prevent it from unexpectedly shutting down or crashing. I would have appreciated if there were also gesture controls available, allowing you to manage the device simply by using hand movements. However, this option is not present. In the gallery, you can press and hold on a person to select them, which is a nice feature. But there's an inconsistency here. It seems illogical for artificial intelligence tools to be active if no text is being selected. Therefore, it prompts you to provide directions like, if it were text, for instance, when we make a summary, it will do what it wants without considering the image I'm supposedly selecting. This shows Xiaomi needs to refine the operating system to fix these inconsistencies. However, it does allow you to select and extract images to save separately or copy for use elsewhere. Note that if I copy an image and try it, it works. When you paste into WhatsApp, you'll notice that if it's sent as a sticker, it's quite nice. This offers an easy method to make stickers using your own photos or add them to other collections. Additionally, you can extract text from your photos. Be aware that you can press and hold where there is text, and your device will be able to select it. However, it might get confused if it detects a person in the image as well. And, well, in the gallery, we will find various categories that allow us to explore your photos more easily. Additionally, there is the option to create albums, and it includes a relatively simple video editor. This editor even allows for automatic editing using some templates. Of course, in this situation, we're discussing an editor that doesn't add any kind of watermark. However, let's also emphasize that it is quite simple. Regarding artificial intelligence tools, in the description below, you'll find a specific video where I explain each of these functions in detail and demonstrate how they currently work. Let me briefly mention them now, but for a detailed understanding, please check out the video linked in the description. It offers tools for writing and altering the style of all types of texts. It also allows you to create dynamic landscape wallpapers, enabling a single image to generate something akin to a video. The gallery includes tools for editing to enhance photos, such as increasing resolution, extending the framing, and features like an object eraser and an automatic movie generator. Additionally, in the recorder, you'll find voice transcription capabilities that distinguish between speakers and can summarize and translate all your recordings. Moreover, it includes a conversation translator, face-to-face. It can even translate calls in real time alongside the AI subtitles I showed you. It features a new AI search system, but its performance isn't quite there yet. For instance, searching for tree doesn't yield photos with actual trees, so it's not as smart as we'd hope. Still, it's a step Xiaomi is taking. The remaining AI features come from Google. For instance, we can use Circle to search by holding down the navigation button and hovering over an item of interest. We can also use it to translate screen contents with one touch or find music, whether it's playing around us or on the phone through a video. It's important to mention that Circle to Search isn't available on every Android device yet. However, what you do have on all Android devices is Gemini. This assistant, which supports text, voice, and conversation, helps you find things more easily, almost like chatting with a friend. It's quite fascinating, and I highly recommend giving it a try. Regarding the fingerprint reader located inside the screen, as I mentioned earlier, it is an ultrasonic reader. This means it operates very quickly even if your fingerprint is wet, and it does not. It will emit no light, so if you unlock it in the dark, it will not bother you. It's going to allow you a maximum of 5 records, and note that it allows you to change the recognition animation to various subtle animations. It also has facial recognition, although the device itself throws different warnings telling you that it is not so secure, so it is not so advisable to use it because it is only in 2 dimensions. This mobile phone does not come with Google's Smart Unlock feature. Instead, it includes Xiaomi's own Bluetooth Smart Unlock. This feature only works if you have a Xiaomi watch or bracelet, ensuring that your phone stays unlocked as long as the connection is active. Within the security application, there are additional tools available. For instance, it offers the second space feature, which enables you to have 2 separate phones in one device, with each space having its own files and applications. It's useful for distinguishing your work from personal life, for instance. Additionally, there's a dual app section that allows you to clone certain applications, enabling the use of 2 accounts on the same phone. Moreover, it offers the option to hide applications from the main screen or to block access, so you can only enter using a pattern which can differ from the lock screen, or by verifying with your fingerprint. So, as you can see, it offers some good options, even though it doesn't include a child mode, which would indeed be quite useful. What we will encounter is a security scan for malware. However, this scan is not done in collaboration with any cybersecurity company. Instead, it is an analysis conducted by Xiaomi itself. At least it serves as a small addition to Google Play Protect, which is integrated into all Android devices. In fact, this device also includes many other security features that are part of Google's suite of functions as well. In the description, I am leaving you another video where you can learn more about all the security features, just in case you want to give it a try. This device supposedly integrates the new Android 15 private space, which was developed by Google. However, to be honest, it doesn't work very well and is unnecessary because Xiaomi already has tools like the second space. This is just another demonstration of how HyperOS needs to be better optimized to avoid redundancy or unnecessary functions. However, one feature I find quite useful is that certain applications offer the option to blur their preview in the settings. You can select which apps will display this view. Now, let's discuss the battery. It boasts a capacity of 5,240 mAh, which on paper seems impressive, especially considering it's a compact device, as I mentioned earlier. Despite its size, it still possesses a larger battery compared to most average cell phones of similar dimensions. In fact, when trying to discharge this battery quickly, it functioned like a 5,000 mAh battery, taking about 4 hours and 22 minutes. So it neither disappointed nor surprised. Running a battery drainer in the background while watching videos in the foreground extended its autonomy to about 5 hours and 46 minutes, indicating that background apps can consume less energy with good management, even if not spectacular. I've never encountered a battery that I found appealing, yet interestingly, when I performed the most basic test, it was somewhat disappointing. I mean, playing videos on YouTube with the screen brightness set to 50%. In this scenario, from 100 to 0%, it only lasted around 15 hours. To put this into perspective, consider a Galaxy S25, which is slightly smaller than this model and has a significantly smaller theoretical battery, yet it managed to exceed 18 hours. So it's intriguing that for some reason, in high-performance tasks, the device handles things quite well. And in tasks that do not require so much power, curiously it seems that the device spends more energy than desired. So I insist that the battery life depends on your day-to-day. Surely some people will perceive the battery life as positive and other people as negative. It will depend very much on the type of user you are. But it is not a battery that has been attractive to me. Most likely you will need to use the power saving mode on a daily basis if you want to further extend the battery. And fortunately it is a mode that is present and works well. And you also have the ultra saving mode for those times of emergency. And if you can restrict many tasks of your cell phone to stay with the basics of calls, messages, one or another application. And when the device runs out of battery, fortunately you have a supported power of 90 watts. The charger can become a bit controversial because in certain regions it is not included in the box. However, in the case of Mexico, it is indeed included in the box. Now, if we look at the graph, in the first 15 minutes it charged up to 29%. This is because during the initial minutes it reaches quite a high power in its charging. After 30 minutes we already had 52% of the battery charged. Although it is noteworthy that after the initial phase, the device maintains a charge of about 20 watts or so. Then the full charge was completed in 68 minutes. Nothing extremely spectacular, but in the first few minutes you can recover a significant amount of battery if your device has gone down to zero. By the way, it also supports 50 watts of wireless charging. And however, you obviously need to purchase the original Xiaomi charger if you want to experience that level of power. But if not, you can also place it to charge with Qi or Qi compatible chargers, and either way, it will still receive wireless charging. It features reversible wireless charging for accessories, and to prevent battery wear, it includes smart charging and a charging lock. This way, your battery is protected if you leave it charging overnight or need it plugged in consistently, like when driving for Uber. Connectivity-wise, it excels as a high-end device, boasting even Wi-Fi 7 for fast speeds. The download speeds are going to be incredibly fast, almost like lightning if you have a compatible environment. Additionally, it features eSIM, allowing you to add data plans using QR codes, which means you don't necessarily have to purchase a physical SIM card. For those who travel frequently, trust me, this will be extremely convenient. Moreover, it offers, through software, the capability to block mobile data usage for specific applications, ensuring they can only access the internet via Wi-Fi, helping you avoid any unwanted data consumption. Surprisingly, it also comes with support for Bluetooth 6. This device is one of the first to support such a feature. While there aren't many accessories available yet to fully take advantage of all its benefits, rest assured, it promises more stability, improved range, and all the enhancements that come with it. As anticipated in devices at this price point, it does not include FM radio. However, it does feature NFC, allowing for mobile payments by simply bringing your cell phone closer to bank terminals. When it comes to the USB port, it is 3.2 Gen 1, which offers very impressive transfer speeds. Naturally, it supports OTG accessories, allowing you to connect various devices. Additionally, you can connect HDMI adapters to mirror the screen through cables, providing very reliable stability. Alternatively, you have the option for wireless projection, which includes more advanced features. For instance, you can minimize the application you are projecting, allowing you to perform other tasks on your mobile phone without interrupting the projection. Moreover, you can continue to project seamlessly. When the screen is turned off, you can prevent high power consumption, and you can also choose to hide notifications and private items so they remain unseen on the wireless projection, appearing only on your phone screen. However, this device does not feature a desktop mode like those found in Samsung, Huawei, or Motorola devices, so if you are looking for that, unfortunately, it's not available here. On the bright side, if you have Android Auto, it does come with a physical proximity sensor. It is something that is much appreciated because Xiaomi was one of the manufacturers that bet a lot on virtual proximity sensors. And besides that, yes, we will find geomagnetic field orientation sensor and gyroscope. In fact, it also keeps infrared to make universal remote control. Although curiously, it is placed in the part of the camera module. So you have to turn on the TV in this position instead of the natural position. Let's discuss Xiaomi's ecosystem a bit more. We are all aware that Xiaomi is recognized as a brand that provides a vast array of accessories, some of which have unnecessary connections to your cell phone. For instance, you can connect a Xiaomi blender to your cell phone. Why would you need that? I'm not sure, but it's possible. Numerous accessories will connect via the Xiaomi Home app, which could be a major highlight. However, it also has certain limitations because Xiaomi Home isn't compatible with many other devices. However, I appreciate that Xiaomi has developed its own product ecosystem quite effectively. Naturally, it includes the Xiaomi Pad with various versions, and it also offers numerous versions of the Xiaomi Smart Band. Along with its watches, its own headphones, and everything connects with each other relatively easily. Yet, similar to many other brands, it has carved out a small niche within the ecosystem, and that's in laptops. Xiaomi indeed offers its own Xiaomi Book, but unfortunately, it doesn't distribute these laptops widely across the globe. However, at the very least, they do include a link to Windows pre-installed on the phone, which helps to save some steps for the user. Nevertheless, it still requires additional configuration to successfully connect your phone with a Windows laptop. Ideally, Xiaomi should work towards distributing its laptops more broadly worldwide to enhance the ecosystem experience for users, although there remain some pending issues to address. And regarding its own services, we will notice that it heavily relies on Google worldwide, although in China it has developed well globally. For instance, it prioritizes using Google Photos and Google Drive for cloud storage. In fact, the Xiaomi Gallery is synchronized with Google Photos. However, Xiaomi also provides its own app store. You can see a slight intention to reduce dependency on Google, but at the same time it seems to abandon that idea. Certain services to give favor to Google. They depend on you as a user if you like this or not, but the ecosystem is growing in a good way. Let's test how long it takes to open apps on the Xiaomi 15 with this traditional test. This device integrates the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, so it is the most advanced of today, and is accompanied by 12 GB of LPDDR4X RAM memory, so it should be lightning fast. As you can see in this case, it took around 75 seconds on average. Over there, it appears that it took a bit longer to display the recent applications, but there it is, look at that. It seems to have a small bug when loading this, but it appears that it is now fixed. Well, overall, it seems to have very fast performance. Although the system needs some perfection, with 12 GB of RAM, I believe the device will maintain a super smooth experience. I do not think it will be restarting applications frequently, but we should definitely check it out for ourselves instead of just making assumptions. It's important to note that we haven't observed the device restarting any apps yet. This suggests that it will likely maintain high performance. Just like any top-tier high-end device, it's expected to be incredibly fast. In this particular case, you can switch between apps in this manner. However, we did notice a white screen, especially on Amazon. It's worth mentioning that it seems a bit confused with the gesture to minimize the screen to a mode of... Using it with one hand might be tricky, but regardless, once you become accustomed to it, you can switch between apps quickly without worrying about the device rebooting anything. Now, for instance, let's take a look at browsing a feed, like in this instance X, and observe that the device remains smooth without freezing at any point. However, the scrolling doesn't appear as rapid. I noticed that I need to make the gestures quite exaggerated for it to scroll more quickly, so it becomes a bit of a, once that's a small detail that should definitely be improved. So now, let's go ahead and do the test on Instagram and see what happens. It seems to take a little while to load some content there, but that's nothing unusual, it's quite normal. Obviously, it's going to download some content in real time, so really, it's nothing unusual. Also, note that the scrolling is fast, it doesn't freeze or stumble at all. At the software level, it also has the memory extension, which by default comes with an additional 6 gigabytes of memory. Virtual RAM, in my opinion, is unnecessary, yet it's included. I forgot to demonstrate how it handles graphic effects. In this situation, I believe it performs adequately for applications and tools with real-time processes. I think it doesn't encounter any issues. Of course, there are certain effects that might take a bit of time to download, but once they're downloaded, you can apply them swiftly. Think about the fact that it includes 512 gigabytes of storage, which is really excellent news. This is because it will be quite hard to fill them up. Additionally, Xiaomi has somehow managed to add another 16 gigabytes, which are very useful for storing the system and providing you with a truly good capacity. Often, the operating system itself takes up a huge amount of space. In this particular case, it only uses 116063 gigabytes. This is quite remarkable, as other devices tend to use up about 20 gigabytes for the system alone. Therefore, it is important to highlight this as a significant point. Data. However, as I mentioned, besides the 5112, it also includes these additional 16. Naturally, it comes equipped with excellent tools for cleaning up your storage. You'll notice that it performs a thorough analysis, and with just one touch, you can clean up or alternatively, explore each item individually to decide what to clean. Moreover, from the gallery, you'll see that it offers an option to free up space, which will conduct another analysis. This will reveal, for instance, screenshots and photos that appear to be duplicated. So it seems to me that through these tools, it really provides you with a lot of assistance. In fact, within the security application, there is an additional button called the cleaner. Although it functions exactly the same as what we observed a moment ago, it would be more efficient to unify all the tools. This is another indication that HyperOS needs further refinement. Actually, besides the cleaner, there is another option labeled deep cleaning, and in this instance, it also offers an individual analysis, for example, of the data from the video applications in particular are worth noting. It's quite evident that having a single tool where everything is integrated would be far superior than having tools scattered across the system. Nevertheless, it does highlight the available options. Now let's take a moment to examine how the storage performs, because we're dealing with UFS 4 here. However, as you can observe in this application, it doesn't appear to be utilizing that capability effectively. It falls significantly short compared to what we have observed in other devices. The same situation will occur with the write speed. It seems that with this app, we're not obtaining a result from a high-end device, but rather from a low-end one. This is disappointing for you. Some of you have mentioned that you would prefer the test to be conducted using Antutu. Therefore, we will perform the storage test to determine if there is any difference. In that case, we may choose to switch to Antutu tests if they prove to be more accurate. Let's wait and see. Just a moment, please. As you can see here, when it comes to read speeds, it provided me with a result of 3,515 megabytes per second, which is quite high. The same applies to the read speed, so yeah, it's probably best that we conduct these tests in future videos. I really appreciate you informing me about that issue. Additionally, you can see the RAM speed here, as well as the speed in artificial intelligence reads. So, if you need the reference data and are really into number crunching, here it is for you. If numbers aren't your thing and you prefer real-life examples, we have a process to export a video. As usual, we'll export it in 4K and wait to see the duration. Keep in mind, these clips were recorded in 4K with this device, and together they total 1 minute. And there you have it, took about 15 seconds, so it performs very quickly in real-life scenarios. When it comes to games, we still see inconsistencies with Xiaomi. They do have a game manager, yet by default, this icon isn't visible on the main screen. You actually need to locate it within the security application. For some reason, games are placed inside security. Also, take note that here it's referred to as Game Turbo, but once you open it, it's named Game Space. Regardless, within this section, you'll find the games you've installed. Importantly, you can scroll through this section to choose your profile. Consumption if you prefer to save power, or if you want to give maximum power to the processor. In fact, an interesting thing here is that it lets us fully customize how it behaves with various graphic settings. This makes it amazing what we can achieve in terms of performance customization. Here, you can also take a quick glance at the status of the battery, CPU, and GPU. When you run a game, you'll notice that this small bar appears as well. For instance, with just a single touch, we have the ability to optimize performance. Additionally, we can access this section where we can individually customize and enhance the performance or clean the RAM memory. Furthermore, we will also have a button available to activate the Do Not Disturb mode, helping us avoid interruptions. There's another button for taking screenshots and also for screen recordings. We can access the settings of these gaming tools or even project them. We can wirelessly connect our screen, enhance Wi-Fi latency, adjust the brightness of our screen, or alter the notification style. By default, you'll see notifications appear as a balloon that you can scroll down to open a floating view. If you prefer not to be interrupted by this balloon, you can press this button. Observe how the notifications now display in a strip running across the screen. Unfortunately, this shows only a small amount of content. Then, you have the option to select the display mode. Additionally, there are other devices that give you the ability to customize these strips that are displayed on the screen. This would be preferable because while the idea is good, I believe the implementation falls short of making it truly useful. Moreover, we also come across voice modifiers that let you alter the style of your microphone in games with chat functionality, and you can also access some floating timers if you find them beneficial in certain games. And naturally, you have the option to open applications here as well. Additionally, there's a floating window mode available. Now, let's move on to the tests. Just like any high-end device, it enables us to have the maximum graphics quality while maintaining the highest rate. However, if you prioritize an ultra rate, the graphics quality will decrease to an average level. It's important to remember that this processor ensures a very high level of compatibility with numerous graphics and visual effects. At a high-end level, we get the gaming experience expected, prioritizing graphics quality. It gives us an average of 60 frames per second with great stability dropping to 53. It maintains a cool experience so nothing bad is seen. However, while recording, I noticed some low peaks that are a bit more noticeable. However, note that in this instance, we recorded the screen at 60 frames per second with a quality of 1 megabit per second. Interestingly, it allows up to 50 megabits per second for ultra-sharp recordings. Still, this indicates that it's not specialized for gameplays, though it performs well if you're playing without recording. When prioritizing the fluidity of the game, it's important to note that if it reaches 120 frames per second and maintains this with very good stability, it generally stays quite stable. However, when recording the screen, you might notice some low peaks. While these aren't extremely serious, they do appear somewhat consistently, thus we can confirm that for gameplay, it may not seem very appealing if you're recording. However, if you don't record the screen while playing, you'll likely have a very good experience. We continue now with Legends, setting everything to the highest level possible. Even if we are talking about a high-end device, the overall performance is quite good, with an average of 59 frames per second. There are some low peaks, but this game consistently shows them on all cell phones we have tested so far. There is not a single device that doesn't display these low peaks in this game, so it's quite normal. After that, we played Genshin Impact, and once more we turned the settings up to the maximum to see what performance we could achieve. I switched the cell phone to 60 frames per second, and honestly, the performance is outstanding. We could say it's perfect, as it works exceptionally well and is quite surprising. In such a small cell phone, the heating isn't excessively high. Interestingly, I noticed this same heating while testing the opening of applications, checking storage, RAM, and exporting videos. It's impressive how well it handles these tasks without overheating significantly. So let's say that in games the heating is low, but for everyday app use I'd say it's high, which is a bit curious. Xiaomi integrates a system called Ice Loop, providing a larger contact area between the heat-conducting tubes and the frame, dissipating heat effectively. This might cause the outer lid to feel hot, while the inside possibly stays cool enough too. We managed to achieve a smooth and fluid feeling in your games and everything else you do. We then went on to play Arena Breakout, once more setting it to a remarkably high quality. In this case, we had a good experience, although it didn't have perfect stability throughout. The average was 108 frames per second, but interestingly at certain moments it dropped down to 60 frames per second for some reason, most likely due to the game's configuration. However, other times it would go back up again to 120 frames per second and maintain that level from there. It maintains 100% stability, which is why the average isn't 120. Let's say the game alternates between 120 and 60, maintaining good stability overall. Even when recording, the device didn't heat up much, indicating a good cooling system. Then we played Kark Street on very high quality. I think we could push this to the Ultra model, but let's see how it performs in this setting. In this particular case, you can observe that the stability experienced a bit more impact than usual. This is due to the complexity of the game, primarily because of its advanced graphics, which include ray tracing technology. However, it's important to note that even with the game set to maximum settings, it doesn't overly challenge the capabilities of this compact device. Of course, if you choose to play with reduced graphics settings, you will undoubtedly enjoy a much better experience, with the device running cooler and more efficiently. Nonetheless, I must emphasize that even with all these parameters set to their highest levels, the device still demonstrates good gaming performance. Finally, we played War Thunder, another game with ray tracing. So we set it to the highest possible quality at 100. 20 frames per second, and in the tests it did reach 120 at some points, although later it dropped to 90 frames per second. But it seems that the management made by the operating system is intelligent. giving priority to a stable experience, because as you can see in the graph, it remains quite stable even though it has been set on 90 frames per second. Other devices might experience significantly more instability before stabilizing at 60, but Xiaomi appears to make a much more intelligent adjustment. Given that it is such a compact device, the reality is that the gaming experience has been quite positive. In conclusion, this high-end device defends itself exceptionally well and presents very strong arguments to compete, particularly at the photographic level. 3 high-resolution sensors for the rear camera that give us very good quality photos with Leica styles, with very good hardware, very good treatment for the lenses and good light input. It stands out especially for the tele-macro capabilities of its telephoto camera, so it gives us a much more professional perspective for macro photography that looks amazing. The video recording, I think that without becoming the best exponent, it defends itself very well. But the front camera has a very good quality. The focus is fixed, and that is something that really bothers me a lot in a high-end device. However, when it comes to design, it is quite nice. It feels great in the hand and has a good level of resistance with an IP68 rating. The screen also offers very good features with excellent resolution and overall quality. The sound quality is also good all around, and it even allows you to control the volume separately for each application, which is a feature that not many devices offer. At the software level, I think the battery does nothing more than comply. The software is another aspect where much depends on personal preference. Personally, HyperOS doesn't fully convince me, although some evolution is noticeable. In terms of security, it offers excellent tools like App Lock and an ultrasonic fingerprint reader. Performance meets the flagship level we expect. It's fast at tasks and performs well in games. Surprisingly, it doesn't heat up much for a compact smartphone. My full video review is available if you want more details. Well, that's it for this review. I hope you liked it. If you did, let us know and we'll see you next time.